The humans warned us 3 times before we crossed into their forbidden space, and all 3 times we laughed. We thought it was a bluff, that trespassing on Terran territory is a death sentence was the kind of thing a weak power says to frighten a strong one away from something valuable. We were wrong about almost everything. The territory was forbidden, and it was a death sentence, and we died in it exactly as they said we would. But the thing that killed us was not the humans. And the thing the humans did, when we began to die, that is the part I have to tell you, because it broke open everything I thought I knew about strength and warnings and mercy, and I have not been the same since. Let me tell you who we were, and what we did, and what we found in the dark. My name is Vorr Tahl. I was, at the time of this story, a sub-commander in the fleet of the Khelth Dominion, a young empire, a strong one, expanding outward through our region of the galaxy with the hungry confidence of a power that has not yet been humbled. We were proud. We had reason to be, or thought we did. Our fleets were formidable, our technology sharp, our will hard, and we had spent a generation pushing our borders outward into the territory of weaker peoples and meeting nothing that could stop us. We believed, the way young empires always believe, that strength was the only real law of the galaxy, and that warnings from those weaker than us were simply the noises that weakness makes. It is a belief that works for a long time. It worked for us, right up until the moment it killed thousands of my people in a place we had been begged not to enter. I want you to understand the shape of our pride, because it is the thing that doomed us, and because I have come to believe it is a kind of blindness that afflicts every power that has never lost. We had conquered, in our generation, a dozen weaker peoples, and from each conquest we had drawn the same lesson, that the galaxy was divided into the strong and the weak, the takers and the taken, and that the only question that ever mattered was which one you were. We had heard warnings before. Every people we ever conquered warned us of something, threatened some consequence, promised some price. And every time the warning had been empty, the threat a bluff, the promised price never paid, because the weak cannot enforce their warnings against the strong. We had learned through a generation of being right that warnings were simply what the weak said when they could not stop you. And so we had unlearned the capacity to hear a warning as anything but weakness. It is the most dangerous thing a power can lose, that capacity, and we had lost it completely, and we did not even know it was gone. We thought our deafness to warnings was wisdom, the hard-won knowledge that the galaxy's threats were all bluffs. It was not wisdom. It was the specific stupidity of those who have been lucky for too long. And the sable cordon was about to teach us the difference, in the only language our kind of pride could finally hear, which was the language of our own dead. Let me tell you about the territory and the warning. Out past the edge of our expansion lay a region of space the humans had marked off-limits, a wide zone, cordoned and beaconed and forbidden, along the border of what they called Terran territory. The Khelth Dominion had been expanding toward it for years, and as we drew close, the humans made contact and they gave us the warning. They were very clear. They said the cordon zone was lethal, that anything which entered it would die, and they asked us, formally and repeatedly, not to cross into it. The exact words of their warning, the phrase that came to define everything, were these: trespassing on Terran territory is a death sentence. Do not enter the sable cordon. For your own sake, stay out. They warned us 3 times formally before the final plea, and each warning was more careful and more detailed than the last, as though they could feel us not believing and were trying harder each time to break through. The first warning was a simple boundary notice, the cordon zone, the request to stay clear. When we did not turn away, the second warning came, and it was fuller. It explained that the cordon was not claimed territory in the ordinary sense, that there was no settlement or installation inside it, that it was a hazard zone of the most extreme kind, and it asked again, more urgently, that we not enter. And when we still did not turn away, the third warning came, and it did a thing that should have stopped us cold and instead only deepened our suspicion. The humans offered to show us. They offered to send us their own data on the cordon, the records of what was inside it and why it was lethal, so that we could verify for ourselves that the danger was real. A bluffing power does not offer to open its books. A power hiding a treasure does not invite you to inspect the vault. The human offer to show us their evidence was the single clearest possible sign that they were telling the truth, and we refused even to look at it, because we had already decided what was true, and looking at evidence that might contradict our certainty felt, to our pride, like weakness. We turned down the very proof that would have saved us. That is how completely the deafness had taken us. The humans held out the truth in their open hands, and we slapped it away and called the slapping strength. We heard that warning the way an arrogant power hears any warning from a lesser one. We heard a threat. Trespassing is a death sentence to us. That was not a caution but a boast, the chest thumping of a weaker species trying to frighten us away from its border. And the more they insisted, the more certain we became that they were hiding something. Why would anyone cordon off a vast region of space and warn everyone away from it so urgently, unless there was something in it worth protecting? A weapon, we thought. A resource. A secret the humans did not want the galaxy to have. The very intensity of their warning convinced us that the sable cordon held something valuable, and that the death sentence talk was a bluff to keep us away from it. That is the trap of a certain kind of pride. It cannot conceive that a warning might be sincere, because it cannot conceive of a power that would warn an enemy out of genuine care. We did not believe such a thing existed. We had never met it. So we assumed the humans were lying, the way we would have lied, and we made our plans to cross the cordon and seize whatever they were hiding. I think about the logic we used, and it is a perfect machine for self-destruction, the kind that only the proud can build. Every piece of evidence that should have warned us, we turned into a reason to proceed. The humans warned us urgently, so the thing inside must be valuable. The humans warned us repeatedly, so they must be desperate to keep it. The humans warned us sincerely, even pleadingly, so they must be truly frightened of losing it. Do you see the trap? There was no warning the humans could have given that our pride would not have converted into an invitation. The more honestly they tried to save us, the more convinced we became that they were hiding treasure. We had built a logic in which human sincerity was proof of human deceit, and human care was proof of human fear, and there was no way for the truth to reach us through it, because we had decided in advance that the truth was a lie. I have thought since that this is how the proud always die, not because no one warned them, but because they had made themselves incapable of being warned. The humans did everything right. They told us the exact truth, clearly, repeatedly, with genuine care, and we had armored ourselves so completely against that truth that it could not touch us. The fault was never in the warning. It was in us, in the deafness we had mistaken for strength. I want to be honest about my own part in this, because it shames me, and the shame is the beginning of the only wisdom I have. I was one of the loudest voices for crossing. I was young and ambitious and certain, and I argued in the councils of our fleet that the human warning was exactly the kind of bluff that a bold commander seizes upon, that whatever was in the sable cordon, the humans clearly feared us taking it, and a fleet that crossed in and took it would win great honor. I was persuasive. I helped persuade others. When our fleet finally made the decision to cross into the forbidden zone, I had been one of the architects of that decision, and I was proud of it. I thought I was being bold. I was, in fact, leading thousands of my own people to their deaths, against the sincere and repeated pleas of the only ones in the galaxy who were trying to save us. I did not know that yet. I would learn it soon, in the dark, in the worst way there is. There was one voice against me in the council, and I have to tell you about her, because she was right and I destroyed her with my certainty. Her name was Detached Officer Sen, an older officer, cautious where I was bold, and she argued against the crossing. She said the human warning did not sound like a bluff to her, that she had listened to it carefully, and that there was something in the human voices, a quality she could not name, that did not match the way people lie. She said that in all her years she had never heard a power defend a treasure by begging, and that the begging troubled her, because begging is what you do when you are not protecting something but trying to prevent something. She counseled caution. She counseled sending a single probe or a single ship before we committed the fleet. And I, ambitious, certain, hungry for the honor of the crossing, I argued her down. I said her caution was cowardice dressed up as wisdom. I said that a commander who jumped at every bluff would never conquer anything. I was eloquent and I was young, and the council wanted to be bold, and so they listened to me and not to her. I won the argument. I have never been more ashamed of winning anything. Detached Officer Sen was trying to save thousands of lives, and she had read the situation correctly in every particular, and I used my ambition and my eloquence to override her, because I wanted the glory of the crossing more than I wanted to be careful with the lives in my charge. She died in the cordon with the rest. I lived. I have had to carry, every day since, the knowledge that the one person who tried to stop me was right, and that I killed her by being persuasive, and that the galaxy would have been better served if I had been a worse speaker and a better listener. I want you to know who was in that fleet, because numbers are easy to dismiss and people are not, and I have made myself remember the people. It was not a small force. It was thousands of my people, across dozens of ships, not just warriors but the whole living body of a fleet. The young technicians on their first deployment, the cooks and the medics and the engine tenders, the navigators and the gunners and the deck crews. There were friends of mine aboard those ships. There were people I had trained with, people I had laughed with the night before the crossing, people who trusted me, who followed my fleet across that line because their commanders had decided it was safe and they were soldiers and they went where they were sent. They were not arrogant, most of them. The arrogance was in the command, in me, in the few of us who made the decision. The thousands who died for that decision were ordinary people doing their duty, and they died because their leaders could not hear a warning, and that is the particular evil of a proud command, that its deafness is paid for in the blood of those who had no say in it. When I say we ignored the warning, I do not mean the thousands ignored it. I mean I did, and a few others like me, and then we ordered the thousands across the line. Their deaths are mine. I have never tried to share them out. The humans warned us one final time as our fleet moved into position at the edge of the cordon. This time the message was different, less formal, almost desperate, and it came from a single human voice, a woman who identified herself as a warden of the cordon. I have thought about her words 10,000 times since. She did not threaten us. That was the thing I noticed even then, the thing that should have warned me and did not. She pleaded. She said, "Please, I'm asking you not to do this. The cordon isn't a weapon and it isn't a trick. There's nothing in there for you to take. It's a grave. It will kill you if you enter it and we will not be able to stop it and we will have to watch you die for nothing. Please, turn around. I am begging you. Stay out of the sable cordon." And we heard in her pleading only weakness and confirmation. A grave, she said. We did not believe her. We heard a frightened woman making a last desperate attempt to keep us from her empire's secret, and we were certain now that the secret must be enormous to be defended so. We thanked her, in the cold mocking way a strong power thanks a weak one, and we crossed into the sable cordon. I should tell you what the cordon looked like from the edge, because it was the first thing that did not fit our theory, and I noticed it, and I dismissed it, and I have never forgiven myself for dismissing it. We expected, approaching a region worth defending so fiercely, to find it guarded, a fleet, fortifications, the hard shell that a power builds around something precious. There was nothing. The border of the sable cordon was marked only by beacons, thousands of them, strung across the dark in a vast somber line, each one broadcasting the same warning over and over into the empty. Grave, do not enter, the dead are here, stay out. No warships, no defenses, just the beacons, and beyond them the cordon itself, which was the strangest and most unsettling thing I had ever seen. It was dark in a way that ordinary space is not, a region where the stars seemed dimmed, where something hung in the void that swallowed light, a vast shrouded blackness that our instruments could not fully read. It did not look like a treasure vault. It looked like exactly what the woman had called it, a grave. A great dark tomb in space, marked with thousands of morning beacons, defended by nothing because it did not need defending, because the thing inside it did the defending all on its own. I felt it, looking at it, a wrongness, a dread, some old animal part of me recognizing a place of death when it saw one. And I overrode that feeling because I was a sub-commander of the Khelth Dominion, and I had decided that the dread was just the human's bluff working on my nerves. I led my people past the morning beacons and into the dark. I have spent the rest of my life wishing I had listened to the dread instead of the pride. I keep returning in my memory to the warden's voice, the woman who gave the final plea. There was something in it I did not let myself hear at the time, and it has haunted me since, because it was the sound of someone who had done this before. She did not plead like a person inventing a danger to frighten us. She pleaded like a person who had stood at the edge of the sable cordon before and watched it take people, and could not bear to watch it again. There was grief in her voice that was older than our arrival, the grief of someone whose whole life was spent guarding a tomb and warning the living away from it, and who had learned, the hard way more than once, that the proud do not listen. I understand now that she was not a soldier defending a border. She was a keeper of the dead and a saver of the foolish, and when she begged us to turn around, she was not protecting a secret. She was trying, with everything she had, to keep from adding our thousands to the count of those the cordon had already swallowed. I did not hear any of that then. I heard a weak voice making a last desperate bluff. I have learned since that the difference between a threat and a plea is the most important distinction in the galaxy, and that the proud cannot hear it, and that the inability to hear it is the most expensive deafness there is. Let me tell you what we found when we crossed the warning line, because it was not a weapon, and it was not a treasure, and it was not the humans waiting to kill us. It was something far stranger and far more terrible, and the humans had told us exactly what it was, and we had not believed them. The sable cordon was a death sentence. Every word of the warning was true, and we discovered the truth of it in the worst possible way, one ship at a time in the dark, beginning the moment we crossed the line, and the only ones in the entire galaxy who tried to save us from it were the very people whose warning we had laughed at. The crossing itself was quiet. That is the thing I remember, how quiet it was, how anticlimactic in the first moments. We passed the line of morning beacons, their warnings fading behind us, and we moved into the dark of the cordon, and for a little while nothing happened at all. I remember the relief that went through the fleet, the laughter on the command channels, the sense of vindication. See, it was a bluff, there is nothing here, the humans were lying after all. I remember feeling it myself, the warm rush of having been right, of having been bold while others counseled caution. We pushed deeper, looking for the treasure we were certain the humans had hidden, scanning the dark for the weapon or the resource or the secret. And we found only the dark, the strange light-swallowing dark, deepening around us as we went, our instruments reading less and less the further in we pushed, the stars behind us dimming as the cordon closed over us like water over a sinking thing. And then the first ship died. It was one of our forward scouts, deep in ahead of the main fleet, and it did not die in battle because there was no enemy. It simply stopped. One moment it was there on our display, transmitting, and the next its signal was gone, and when we tried to raise it there was nothing, only silence, only the dark. We thought it was a malfunction at first. Then a second ship went silent in a different part of the formation. Then a third. And a cold understanding began to move through the fleet, the understanding that whatever was killing our ships was not a weapon we could see or fight, was not the humans, was not anything we had a name for, was the cordon itself, the dark itself, the thing the humans had begged us to stay out of, beginning, exactly as they had promised, to kill us. I have tried many times to describe the particular horror of those first minutes, and I have never quite managed it, because it was a kind of fear I had never felt before and have never felt since. We were soldiers. We knew how to be afraid of an enemy, of guns, of fleets, of things that could be fought or fled. This was not that. There was nothing to fight. There was nothing to shoot at, nothing to maneuver against, no direction to flee because the death was not coming from a direction. It was simply there, in the dark all around us, taking our ships one at a time with no pattern we could find and no defense we could mount. A ship would be there, and then it would be gone, and we could not even tell at first what was killing them, only that to be in the cordon was to die slowly ship by ship, and that nothing we knew how to do made any difference. I watched the fear move through the fleet on the command channels, watched it turn from confusion to disbelief to a rising animal panic, as ship after ship went silent and the survivors began too late to understand. The humans had not been bluffing. There was no treasure. There was only this, the dark, and the dying, and the slow, horrible dawning that we had been told the exact truth, and had sailed our thousands into it anyway. I remember a voice on the command channel, young, one of the technicians, asking over and over, "What is killing us? What is killing us? I can't see what's killing us." And there was no answer because the thing killing us was the place itself, the grave the humans had wept and begged us to stay out of, and we were in it now, and it had us. Let me tell you what was actually inside Terran territory, and what the humans did when the empire that ignored their warning began, exactly as they had said it would, to die. We were dying in the dark, and we could not even fight it, and then human ships came into the cordon, and my first thought, my proud stupid soldiers' thought, was that they had come to finish us off, to watch us die or to make sure of it. I could not have been more wrong. They had come into the place that was killing us, into the death they had begged us to stay out of at terrible risk to themselves, for one reason only, to pull as many of us out of it as they could before it took us all. They had come to save the empire that had laughed at their warning. I did not understand it. It took me a long time to understand it. It is the thing I am still, all these years later, trying to be worthy of having seen. But first I have to tell you what the cordon was, because the humans told us, finally, when they came, and the truth of it was the last thing I expected. The sable cordon was a grave. The warden had said it from the beginning, and it was the literal truth. Long before our empire ever reached that region of space, something had happened there, a catastrophe in humanity's own past, a disaster I will not pretend to fully understand, something to do with an experiment or a technology or a wound in space itself that had gone wrong on a scale almost beyond imagining. A great many humans had died there, all at once, in whatever the catastrophe was, and the thing that had killed them had not gone away. It remained a lingering lethal phenomenon, a region of space that was simply, permanently deadly, that killed anything which entered it through means our science could not even properly measure. Humanity could not fix it. They could not clean it or close it or make it safe. All they could do was seal it off, cordon it, beacon it, mark it as a grave and a hazard, and spend the generations since standing guard at its edge, warning the living away from the place where so many of their dead still drifted in the killing dark. That was what we had crossed into, not a treasure vault, not a weapon cache, a tomb, humanity's tomb, the resting place of a catastrophe's worth of their own dead, sealed off and mourned and guarded, not to keep us from something valuable, but to keep us from dying exactly the way we were now dying. The Terran territory we had trespassed on was not a border that humanity defended for power or profit. It was a graveyard that humanity defended out of grief and out of care, grief for their own dead who lay within it, and care for every living thing that might wander in and join them. The cordon was not a wall around a secret. It was a fence around an open grave, put up by people who could not bear to watch anyone else fall in. Warden Cole told me more of it later when it was over, and I have carried the weight of it ever since. The catastrophe that made the cordon had happened long ago, and the humans who died in it had been their own, explorers, scientists, settlers. No one is fully sure anymore. The records are old and the grief has worn the details smooth. But thousands of them had died there all at once in the thing that went wrong, and their ships and their bodies were still in there, drifting in the dark, because humanity had never been able to safely recover them. Think about what that means. For all the generations since, Humanity had known exactly where thousands of their dead lay and had not been able to go and bring them home, because the place that killed them would kill anyone who tried. They could not bury their dead. They could not even reach them. All they could do was seal the grave, and stand guard at its edge, and keep the rest of the living from joining the ones they had already lost and could not retrieve. The wardens of the cordon, I learned, considered it the most sacred and the most sorrowful duty in human space, to keep watch over a graveyard they could not enter, to guard the dead they could not bury, and to turn away, gently, anyone who came too close to the dark that had taken so many. That was the duty Warden Cole had given her life to, and we had sailed into the middle of it and called her a liar. And we had called it a bluff. We had heard of people guarding their dead and trying to save the living, and we had decided they were lying to protect a treasure, because our pride could not imagine any other reason to forbid a region of space. The shame of that understanding when it came was almost worse than the dying. We had not just been foolish. We had taken humanity's grief, the sealed tomb of their catastrophe, the thing they guarded with such weary sorrow, and we had treated it as a lie told to cheat us, and we had trampled into it, and now we were dying in the middle of their graveyard among their dead, because we had been too proud to believe that a warning could be anything but a trick. Let me tell you what happened when the human ships came. We were deep in the cordon by then and dying fast. Perhaps a third of our fleet was already gone, ships winking out one by one, swallowed by the lethal dark, with nothing we could do to save them or even to understand what was taking them. The fleet was in full panic, trying to turn back, trying to claw its way out of the cordon the way we had come. But the cordon was vast, and we had pushed deep into it, and the way out was long, and the dark was killing us faster than we could flee it. We were, I understood with a cold clarity, going to die in there. All of us. The entire fleet, thousands of my people, was going to be swallowed by the human graveyard we had been begged not to enter, and there was nothing any of us could do but watch it happen and wait for our own turn in the dark. And then human ships appeared on our scanners, coming into the cordon from the direction of the border, and I gave the order to prepare to fight them, because I assumed, in my pride, that they had come to destroy what was left of us. It was the only thing that made sense to me. We had trespassed. We were their enemy. We were weak and dying and helpless, and a sensible power finishes a helpless enemy. That is what we would have done, so I braced for the killing blow. I have to tell you about the argument that broke out among our surviving commanders, because it is the most damning thing of all, and I was part of it. When the humans broadcast their offer to lead us out, a great many of our commanders, myself included at first, did not believe it. We argued on the command channels, even as our ships died around us, about whether it was a trick. Some said the humans were luring us into a trap, leading us deeper to finish us. Some said it was a humiliation, a way to make us beg. Some said that even if it was sincere, we should not take it, that it was beneath the dignity of the Khelth Dominion to be saved by the people we had come to conquer, that it was better to die proud than to live as the rescued of a lesser race. Do you understand the sickness of that? We were dying, helplessly, in a graveyard we had been begged to stay out of, and our pride was still arguing that we would rather die than accept the mercy of the people we had wronged. That is how deep the deafness went. Even at the very end, even with the dark taking us, some part of us could not bear to believe that an enemy would save us, because if an enemy would save us, then everything we believed about strength and weakness and the law of the galaxy was wrong. It was easier to some of our commanders to die than to be wrong. I am ashamed to say I understood the feeling. I am more ashamed to say it took the sight of human ships dying to save us before I could let go of it. It did not come. The human ships came into the cordon, into the death zone, into the place that was killing us at obvious and terrible risk to themselves, and they did not fire. Instead, they began to broadcast on every channel in our own language, a message that I will hear in my mind until the day I die. A human voice, the warden, the same woman who had begged us not to enter, said, "Khelth Fleet, this is Warden Cole. We are coming in to get you out." Do exactly what we say, and we can save some of you. We know the safe paths through the cordon. There are corridors the phenomenon doesn't reach, and we can lead you through them, but you have to follow us exactly, and we have to move fast. Form up on our ships. We will guide you out. We are not here to fight you. We are here to get you home. Please let us help you. We don't want to watch you die in here. Form up and follow us in live. I want to tell you about my own ship, because that is where I learned what the humans were, with my own eyes, in a way I could never afterward deny. My ship was deep in the cordon, and it was dying not all at once, but in stages, systems failing, the lethal dark working its way into us. And I knew, with the cold certainty of a soldier who has run out of options, that we had only a little time left before we went silent like the others. And then a human ship found us. It came out of the dark toward my dying vessel, a small ship, a rescue craft, not a warship. And it took up position ahead of us in the most dangerous spot, the leading edge where the phenomenon was worst. And a human voice told us to follow exactly, through a corridor only they could see. And we followed. We put our lives entirely in the hands of the people we had trespassed against, because there was nothing else left to do. And the human ship led us through the killing dark along a path that wound between the lethal zones, a path that no instrument of ours could detect, that the humans knew only from generations of mapping the edges of their own grave. They led us out. My ship and the people on it are alive because a human rescue craft put itself in the deadliest position in the cordon and led us by the hand through a graveyard, slowly, carefully, never once leaving us, though every minute it spent doing it was a minute it spent in the dark that could take it too. Not everyone made it. I have to tell you that because it is the truth and because the humans grieved it as if our dead were their own. Detached Officer Sen, the one who had tried to stop me, the one who had been right, her ship was too deep in, too far gone when the humans reached the fleet. They tried. I heard them try, on the channels, heard a human rescue ship calling to Sen's vessel, trying to find a path to it, refusing to give up on it long after the odds were gone. But the dark took Sen's ship before they could reach it. She died in the cordon I had led her into, with the others who were too deep to save. And the thing I cannot forget is that the humans grieved her, a human voice on the channel. When Sen's ship went silent, said, "We lost one, we lost one." I couldn't reach them, in a tone of genuine anguish, grieving the death of an enemy soldier they had never met in the graveyard of their own dead, while they were risking their lives to save the rest of us. They did not see Sen as an enemy who got what she deserved. They saw a person they had failed to save, and it hurt them, and they carried it. I had led Sen to her death. The humans, who owed her nothing, mourned her. The distance between those two things is the whole of what I learned in the sable cordon. Let me tell you what it was like to hear that, to be a proud soldier of a conquering empire, dying in a graveyard I had been begged to stay out of, and to hear the very people I had trespassed against come into the death zone after me, not to finish me but to save me. I did not understand it. Some of our commanders did not believe it, thought it was a trick, the way we would have made it a trick. But the humans proved it in the only way that mattered. They put their own ships into the killing dark, ahead of ours in the most dangerous positions, and they began to lead us out, and human ships began to die doing it. They were spending their own lives in the grave to pull out the empire that had laughed at their warning. Let me tell you what the humans did in the sable cordon, and what it cost them, and how the people we had treated as liars and weaklings became, in the killing dark, the only reason any of us came home at all. They got most of us out. Not all of us. The dark had taken too many before they reached us, and it took some even during the rescue, and it took human ships too, human lives spent leading us through a grave to save the empire that had laughed at their warning. But they got most of us out. Thousands of my people are alive because the humans we trespassed against came into their own graveyard after us and would not leave until they had pulled out everyone they could reach. And when it was over and we were clear and I finally stood face to face with the warden whose plea I had mocked, she did not say the thing I deserved to hear. She said something else entirely, and it remade me. Let me tell you how the rescue ended. It took hours, long, terrible hours, the human ships leading our broken fleet out of the cordon in pieces, corridor by corridor, never moving faster than the slowest damaged ship could manage, never leaving anyone they could still reach. I watched the humans work, on the channels and on my displays, and I have never seen anything like it. They were not soldiers doing a duty. They were rescuers doing the thing they had given their lives to, calm, relentless, refusing to abandon anyone, going back again and again into the worst of the dark for one more ship, one more crew, one more handful of the people who had trespassed against them. They knew the cordon the way you know a thing you have grieved your whole life. They threaded us through it along paths that existed only in their generations of careful mapping, and where the paths ran out, where a ship was too deep or too damaged to reach. They did not simply write it off, they tried, and only stopped when there was truly nothing left to try. And when they stopped, you could hear the grief in their voices, every time, for people who were not even their own. And it cost them. I need you to understand that it cost them, because that is the measure of what they did. Human ships died in the cordon that day, leading us out rescue craft that pushed too deep, that took the dangerous leading positions, that spent themselves in the killing dark so that our ships could follow them through. The humans knew the risk. They knew the cordon better than anyone alive. They knew exactly how likely it was that some of them would not come back out. And they went in anyway, into the grave of their own dead, to save the lives of the empire that had spat on their warning, and some of them joined the dead they were guarding in the dark for our sake. I did not understand how a people could do that. I still, in some part of me, do not. To spend your own life in the worst place you know, to save the people who wronged you, there was no logic in it that my empire had ever taught me. There was only a kind of largeness of soul that I had not known existed, and that I had nearly died without ever learning was possible. I watched one of them die. I have to tell it, because the human who died saving us deserves to be more than a number in this account. There was a cluster of our ships pinned deep in the cordon, too deep, in a pocket where the lethal dark had nearly closed around them, and the rescue corridor to reach them ran through one of the worst zones in the whole grave. A human rescue ship went in for them anyway. I heard the pilot on the channel, a young human voice, steady, talking the trapped Khelth ships through the corridor. This way, follow me, stay tight, we're almost there, almost there. And I watched on my display as the human ship led those Khelth vessels out, holding the deadly leading edge the whole way, taking the worst of it onto itself so the ships behind could follow in its shadow. It got them out. Every one of the trapped ships made it to safety behind that human pilot. And then the human ship, which had spent too long in the worst of the dark holding the corridor open, did not make it out itself. It went silent at the very edge of safety, with the people it had saved already clear, and the channel was quiet for a moment, and then I heard Warden Cole's voice say a name. The pilot's name softly, the way you say the name of someone you have just lost. A human had traded their own life knowingly at the last to lead a cluster of Khelth strangers out of a grave. The ships that pilot saved are crewed by people who are alive today, who have families, who went home. They went home because a human went into the dark and did not come out for them, for the people their empire had wronged. I did not know the pilot's name would matter to me as much as it does. I have never forgotten it. I never will. When we were finally clear of the cordon, the survivors of us, the broken remnant of the fleet that had crossed in with such pride, Warden Cole brought her ship alongside mine, and we spoke, face to face on the screens, the human who had begged us not to enter and the sub-commander who had led the crossing anyway. I tried to apologize. I tried to find words for it, for the dead, for the trespass, for the mockery, for all of it, and I could not, because there are no words large enough for that kind of wrong. And Warden Cole stopped me gently, the way she seemed to do everything. She said, "Don't, not yet. You'll carry it the rest of your life, and that's right, you should, but not yet. Right now you just got your people out of the worst place in the galaxy, and you're going to need to get them home, and that has to come first." And then she said the thing I have built the rest of my life around. She said, "I didn't come in there for an apology, sub-commander. I didn't even come in there for you. I came in because there were living people dying in that place, and I know how to get living people out of that place, and that's the whole of it. That's the only thing the cordon ever taught any of us, that you do not let people die in the dark if you can reach them. Not even people who should have listened. Especially not them. Because the ones who should have listened are the ones who are most alone in there, the ones who are dying knowing it's their own fault. Those are the ones you have to go in for hardest. Nobody else will. Especially not them. I have turned those words over 10,000 times. We had given the humans every reason to let us die. We had mocked their grief, trampled their graveyard, treated their care as a lie. By the cold logic of the empire I served, we had earned the dark. And the humans had come in for us harder because of it, because, Cole said, the ones who have only themselves to blame are the most alone, and the most in need of someone refusing to give up on them. That is the opposite of everything the Khelth Dominion believed. We believed you finished the helpless and abandoned the foolish. The humans believed you went into the grave hardest for exactly the ones who had earned it, because no one else would. I have never recovered from the difference. I do not want to. Let me tell you what happened after, because it is the reason I can tell this story, and the reason it matters. We went home, the survivors of us, and we carried the truth back with us, and the truth changed the Khelth Dominion slowly, the way only a truth bought with thousands of lives can. The empire that had crossed into the sable cordon in arrogance came out of it humbled in a way no defeat in battle could ever have humbled us, because we had not been beaten by the humans. We had been saved by them after wronging them at their own cost, and there is no pride that survives that. You can stay proud after a defeat. Defeat is just strength meeting greater strength, and a proud people can swallow it. But you cannot stay proud after the people you wronged spend their own lives to save you from your own foolishness, and ask nothing, and grieve your dead alongside their own. That breaks something in a proud people that does not grow back the same way. We had gone looking for a weapon to seize, and we had found, instead, a mirror. And what it showed us was so much smaller and crueler than what we had believed ourselves to be that we could not unsee it. I had to face the families when we got home. That was the hardest thing, harder than the dark itself, standing before the families of the thousands I had led into the cordon, the ones whose sons and daughters and parents did not come back, and telling them the truth, that their people had died not in battle, not for glory, but because I had been too proud to believe a warning. I had expected to be hated for it, and some hated me, and they were right too. But the strangest thing happened too, the thing the humans had set in motion without knowing it. Because I told the families everything, not just how their people died, but how the others lived. I told them about the human ships that came into the grave. I told them about the pilot who did not come out. I told them that thousands of us were home, who should all have died, because a people we had wronged refused to let us die alone in the dark. And I watched the families take that in, and I watched something shift in them, the same thing that had shifted in me. The slow turning over of everything we had believed. They had lost people to my pride. But they had also been handed by the humans, a thing the Khelth Dominion had never had. The knowledge that there was another way to be, that strength was not the only law, that a people could be measured by who they refused to let die rather than by who they could destroy. The grief did not go away, but it changed shape. It became, in time, not just grief but resolve, the resolve to make the Dominion into something more like the people who had saved us than like the empire that had killed us. The dead bought that, with the humans' help. It is the only thing that makes their deaths bearable to me, that they did not die for nothing, that their deaths, and the humans' mercy, together changed what their people became. The Dominion never tried to take the cordon again. More than that, and this is the thing I am proudest of, in a life that does not have much in it to be proud of, the Dominion began to change how it heard warnings. Slowly, over years, in 100 small decisions, we became a people who could be warned, who could imagine that a caution from a weaker power might be care rather than weakness, who could hear please don't as something other than a bluff. It did not happen all at once, and it did not happen completely. But it began in the sable cordon in the dark, when an empire that had unlearned how to listen finally heard a warning in the only language it had left to learn it in, the language of human ships dying to save us from the death we had been begged to avoid. The empire ignored the warning. Trespassing on Terran territory was a death sentence, exactly as we were told. Every word of it was true. We crossed the line, and the dark killed thousands of us, precisely as the humans had wept and pleaded and warned. But the death sentence was never theirs to carry out. It was the place, the grave, the lethal sorrow of a catastrophe we had been begged to stay away from. And when the sentence began to fall, the people who had pronounced the warning did not stand back and let it. They came into the dark after the condemned. They spent their own lives to commute a sentence we had earned. The humans had told us from the beginning the simple truth. We don't want to watch you die in here. We had heard a threat. It was a grief. It had always been a grief. And the deepest thing I learned in the graveyard of a people I had wronged was that the difference between a threat and a plea is the difference between an empire and a soul, and that I had served the wrong one my whole life, until a human warden went into a grave to teach me, at the cost of her own people's lives, that there was another way to be. Especially not them. I hear it still. I will hear it until I die. It is the truest thing anyone ever said to me, and a human said it in the dark, about the very people who had given her every reason to let them die, and chose, instead, to go in after them.